7 tests avoidants do before falling in love, and how to hack them. Love. It's the most powerful force on the planet, yet so many people run from it like it's a burning building. Have you ever met someone who keeps their distance, pulls away just when things start getting real? Maybe that's even you. The truth is, avoidants don't just fall in love, they test love. They don't trust emotions easily because in their world, vulnerability means risk. And risk, that's a 4-letter word they don't want to touch. But listen, if you know what these tests are, you can navigate them, break through the walls, and create an unshakable connection. So let's dive into the 7 tests avoidants do before they allow themselves to love and how to hack them. Avoidants don't simply fall in love the way most people do. Love for them is not a smooth, natural progression, but a cautious, calculated process filled with subconscious tests. They don't trust emotions easily because deep down they associate vulnerability with risk. This isn't something they consciously decide, it's a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. To them, emotional closeness feels unpredictable, and unpredictability triggers their instinct to protect themselves. So instead of embracing love, they test it. When an avoidant meets someone they genuinely like, their first instinct isn't to dive in but to observe. They take mental notes. They analyze the other person's reactions, behaviors, and energy. The moment they sense something that feels too intense, too needy, or too demanding, their automatic response is to withdraw. They might not even realize they're doing it. Their nervous system has been wired to associate intimacy with the potential for hurt, control, or loss of freedom. Avoidants often experienced relationships in their past where love felt conditional, inconsistent, or overwhelming. Maybe they grew up in environments where emotional expression was discouraged or where closeness came with expectations they weren't comfortable with. As a result, their subconscious mind developed a defense mechanism. Keep people at arm's length until they prove they are safe. This is why they don't jump headfirst into love. They run it through a series of internal filters, testing whether it's something they can trust. One of the first tests avoidants unconsciously perform is the distance test. They instinctively pull away, physically, emotionally, or both, to see what happens next. They don't necessarily want the other person to chase them, but if someone does, it confirms a fear. This person needs something from me that I'm not sure I can give. The irony is that deep down, they crave connection like everyone else, but their protective instincts override that desire. If instead the other person holds their ground, remains secure, and doesn't react anxiously to the distance, the avoidant starts to feel safer. They realize that closeness with this person doesn't come with pressure or demand. Avoidants also test for emotional intensity. If they sense overwhelming emotional expression too soon, they shut down. This doesn't mean they don't feel deeply. In fact, many avoidants experience intense emotions but have learned to suppress them. If their partner shares too much vulnerability too quickly or expects deep emotional discussions early on, it triggers their fear of being engulfed. The best way to navigate this is through gradual emotional exposure, showing warmth and openness without pushing for reciprocation. This gives the avoidant time to adjust, making emotional closeness feel less like a tidal wave and more like a gentle tide they can step into at their own pace. Inconsistent behavior is another trigger for avoidance. If they've been hurt in the past, they may believe that people don't stick around, that love is unreliable. To test this, they subconsciously look for signs of inconsistency. If they notice someone being hot and cold, making promises but not following through, or reacting emotionally to their distancing, it confirms their belief that relationships are unstable. On the flip side, if they see steady, calm, and reliable behavior over time, they slowly begin to trust. Ultimately, avoidants don't avoid love because they don't want it. They avoid it because they're afraid of what comes with it: loss of independence, emotional overwhelm, or the risk of getting hurt. Their tests aren't about manipulation, they're about protection. If you understand this, you can navigate these tests with confidence, patience, and emotional stability, creating a space where real love can thrive. Chasing an avoidant is one of the quickest ways to push them further away. This is not because they don't want connection, but because their internal wiring tells them that closeness comes with expectations, pressure, or even a loss of self. The moment they feel someone trying to pull them closer than they are ready for, their instinct is to withdraw. This isn't about logic or choice. It's a deeply ingrained pattern based on past experiences. Instead of chasing, the most powerful thing you can do is hold your ground with warmth and consistency. When an avoidant starts pulling away, many people react instinctively by trying to close the gap. They send more messages, ask more questions, or seek reassurance. While this response makes sense from an emotional standpoint, it confirms the avoidant's fear that relationships mean losing their sense of autonomy. The more they sense pursuit, the stronger their need to retreat. It becomes a cycle. They pull back, the other person chases, and they withdraw even further. The only way to break this pattern is by resisting the urge to chase and instead maintaining a calm, steady presence. Holding your ground doesn't mean mirroring their distancing behavior or playing games. It doesn't mean shutting down emotionally or pretending you don't care. It means staying centered within yourself, knowing your own value, and trusting that real connection cannot be forced. When you don't react with panic or anxiety to their withdrawal, you send a powerful message. I'm here, I'm solid, and I don't need to control or force this connection. This is incredibly disarming for an avoidant because it disrupts the cycle they are used to. Instead of feeling pressured, they start to feel safe. Warmth is just as important as consistency. Some people misinterpret the idea of not chasing as being cold or emotionally unavailable, but that only reinforces the avoidant's fears of rejection. Instead, the key is to remain warm, open, and receptive without pushing for more than they are ready to give. This means responding to them with kindness, maintaining positive energy, and making it clear that your presence is not conditional on them behaving a certain way. Avoidants are highly sensitive to emotional shifts, and if they sense that your warmth disappears the moment they create space, it confirms their belief that closeness always comes with expectations. Consistency is what builds trust over time. Many avoidants have experienced relationships where love felt unpredictable, people left, became overly needy, or changed the rules halfway through. They subconsciously test for stability by pulling away and observing what happens. If they see that someone remains steady, continues living their own life, and doesn't react with desperation, they start to relax. Trust is built through repeated experiences, not words. An avoidant won't be convinced by promises. They need to see over time that you remain the same person, regardless of their moments of distance. It's also important to recognize that avoidants don't necessarily pull away because they don't care. In fact, the more they care, the scarier the relationship can feel to them. Their distancing is often a way of self-regulating when emotions become overwhelming. By giving them that space without punishing them for it, you show them that closeness with you doesn't mean suffocation or loss of self. Over time, this makes them feel safer in the connection, and they start returning to it on their own. What often surprises people is that when they stop chasing, avoidants start coming closer. The lack of pressure allows them to reconnect with their own desire for intimacy rather than feeling like they need to defend themselves from it. When they see that you can handle space, that you aren't going to smother them or fall apart when they take a step back, their trust in you grows. Instead of love feeling like something that takes away their independence, it starts to feel like something that adds to their life. Avoidants have a complex relationship with emotions. They experience them just as deeply as anyone else, but instead of expressing them freely, they suppress or compartmentalize them. This isn't because they don't care. It's because at some point in their past, they learned that emotions can be overwhelming, unpredictable, or even dangerous. When emotions come at them too intensely, their automatic response is to shut down. If a relationship starts feeling emotionally heavy too quickly, they instinctively create distance. It's not a conscious decision, it's a survival mechanism. This is why flooding an avoidant with too much emotion too soon can make them withdraw. If someone comes on too strong, whether with declarations of love, deep personal confessions, or high emotional demands, it triggers a fear response. They might disappear for a while, become vague in their communication, or suddenly seem detached. This is not because they don't feel something, but because their nervous system is telling them to retreat to safety. Understanding this pattern is crucial in creating a lasting connection with an avoidant. The key is to introduce emotional depth gradually in a way that feels safe and manageable. Instead of overwhelming them with intense emotions all at once, it's more effective to let emotions trickle in naturally. This approach allows them to adjust at their own pace, rather than feeling like they are being thrown into deep waters without warning. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through controlled vulnerability. Many people believe that deep emotional connection happens when both people share everything openly and quickly, but with an avoidant, that level of vulnerability too soon can feel invasive. Instead, it's better to model emotional openness in a way that feels light and inviting. Sharing small, meaningful insights about your emotions or experiences without expecting immediate reciprocation creates an environment where they feel safe to open up over time. It's also important to recognize that avoidants often process emotions internally before they feel comfortable discussing them. If you ask them to talk about their feelings in the moment, they may feel pressured or put on the spot, leading to more withdrawal. A better approach is to give them space to process while maintaining a steady, accepting presence. Instead of demanding an emotional response, allow them to come to it naturally. When they do share, even in small ways, responding with warmth and appreciation reinforces that emotional expression is safe. Another key aspect of avoiding emotional flooding is balancing emotional conversations with moments of ease and lightness. If every interaction becomes deep and heavy, an avoidant may start associating the relationship with emotional overwhelm. Introducing humor, shared activities, and positive experiences between deeper conversations helps them feel emotionally connected without feeling burdened. Patience is crucial. Avoidants need time to adjust to emotional closeness, and trying to speed up the process will only make them retreat. They need to experience emotional safety consistently before they can fully engage. If they sense that emotions are being used to control, manipulate, or demand something from them, they will instinctively protect themselves by shutting down. But if they see that emotions can be shared in a way that is steady, non-threatening, and supportive, they begin to let their guard down. By approaching emotional connection with a sense of balance, showing warmth without overwhelming, being open without pushing, and allowing space for them to process emotions in their own way, you create an environment where an avoidant feels safe to engage. Over time, they begin to see that emotional connection doesn't have to mean losing control or being consumed. It can be something that strengthens and enhances their sense of self rather than threatening it. Avoidants often struggle with trust in relationships, not because they don't want to trust, but because their past experiences have taught them that closeness can lead to pain, disappointment, or loss of independence. Many avoidants have developed a deep-seated belief that people will eventually leave, change, or expect something from them that they can't provide. This belief isn't always conscious, but it drives much of their behavior in relationships. The only way to build real trust with an avoidant is through consistency, being steady, reliable, and emotionally secure over time. When an avoidant starts to develop feelings for someone, they often test for stability without realizing it. They might pull back suddenly, become less responsive, or create distance to see how the other person reacts. This is not necessarily about manipulation. It's a subconscious way of checking if the relationship is safe. If the other person reacts with anxiety, pressure, or emotional instability, it confirms the avoidant's fear that closeness leads to chaos. But if they see that their partner remains steady, doesn't panic, and continues to live their own life, it signals to them that this relationship is different. Being steady means not reacting impulsively to their distancing. It's natural to feel confused or even hurt when an avoidant pulls away, but responding with anger, accusations, or desperate attempts to pull them back will only reinforce their fears. Instead, holding a calm and grounded energy sends the message that emotional connection does not have to be overwhelming or suffocating. This stability allows the avoidant to return in their own time without fear of punishment. Reliability is another key factor in building trust. Avoidants have often experienced relationships where people were inconsistent, where affection was given and then taken away, where promises were made but not kept. Because of this, they are highly sensitive to inconsistency in others. If they sense that someone is unpredictable or reactive, their instinct is to protect themselves by withdrawing further. To build trust with an avoidant, it's essential to be someone they can rely on. This doesn't mean overpromising or forcing closeness, but rather showing up in a way that is steady and dependable. This consistency applies to both words and actions. Avoidants often listen more to behavior than to verbal assurances. Telling them "you can trust me" or "I won't hurt you" carries little weight if your actions suggest otherwise. But if they see that you are consistently kind, patient, and respectful of their space, trust begins to build naturally. They need to see over time that you are the same person regardless of their moments of withdrawal. One of the most powerful things you can do to build trust with an avoidant is to maintain your own independence. Many avoidants fear that relationships will consume them or take away their freedom. If they sense that a partner is overly dependent on them for emotional stability, they will instinctively pull away. But if they see that you have your own life, your own passions, and your own emotional stability, it reassures them that they are not being trapped. It shows them that the relationship is a source of support, not a burden. Patience is essential, avoidants take time to open up, and trust is not something that can be forced or rushed. The more pressure they feel, the more they will retreat. But if they experience a relationship where they are given space to process their emotions without fear of abandonment, they slowly begin to let their guard down. It's through steady, non-reactive, and reliable behavior that an avoidant starts to trust, not just the person they are with, but the idea that love can be safe. Avoidants have a deeply ingrained fear that relationships will strip them of their freedom. To them, love can feel like a trap, something that will demand too much, take away their independence, or leave them feeling overwhelmed. This fear is not always logical, but it is real to them, often rooted in past experiences where closeness came with pressure, control, or emotional intensity they weren't ready for. Because of this, they instinctively push against anything that feels like it might limit their autonomy. The key to making an avoidant feel safe in a relationship is to ensure they don't feel trapped. The more they perceive that they are free to be themselves, the more they will relax into the connection. If they sense that a relationship allows them space, emotionally, mentally, and even physically, they start to see love as something that enhances their life rather than restricts it. One of the most effective ways to create this sense of safety is by maintaining a strong sense of self. Many people, when they fall in love, begin to prioritize the relationship above everything else. While this is natural, it can be unsettling for an avoidant. If they feel that their partner's happiness, sense of identity, or emotional well-being depends entirely on them, it triggers their fear of being responsible for someone else's emotions. They start to feel pressure, and their first instinct is to retreat. But when they see that their partner is independent, has their own passions, and continues living a fulfilling life outside the relationship, they feel less suffocated. This independence signals to them that the relationship is not a prison, it's a choice. Giving an avoidant space doesn't mean disappearing or becoming distant. It means respecting their need for autonomy. If they take time for themselves, it's not a rejection. If they don't always express emotions the way others do, it's not a lack of care. Accepting these differences without trying to change them allows an avoidant to feel comfortable. They need to know that they can step away when they need to, and that their partner won't react with panic, insecurity, or resentment. It's also important to avoid unnecessary pressure. Many people, without realizing it, place expectations on an avoidant and make them feel trapped. This can be anything from needing constant reassurance to pushing for labels or commitments before they are ready. While clear communication is important in any relationship, pressuring an avoidant to move faster than they are comfortable with will only reinforce their fears. Instead, allowing the relationship to develop at a natural pace gives them the space to open up in their own time. Another way to create safety for an avoidant is by fostering an atmosphere of ease and fun. When relationships become too focused on heavy discussions, emotional processing, or future planning, they can feel like work rather than a source of joy. Incorporating lightness, whether through shared adventures, humor, or simply enjoying the present moment, helps an avoidant associate the relationship with positive feelings rather than stress. When they start to see that love doesn't have to mean emotional overwhelm or loss of self, they begin to let their guard down. Patience is key. Avoidants don't rush into deep emotional connection, and trying to speed up the process will only make them resist. They need time to see that a relationship won't take away their independence. When they realize they are free to be themselves without pressure, their fear of being trapped begins to fade. Over time, they come to understand that real love isn't about control or sacrifice. It's about choosing to be with someone while still being fully themselves. And once they feel that freedom, they are able to connect in a way that is deep, meaningful, and lasting. At the core of every avoidance fear is not a lack of love, but a fear of what love has meant to them in the past. Pressure, loss of independence, or the risk of being hurt. But love doesn't have to be a battlefield of emotional push and pull. When we understand how avoidants test for safety, for consistency, and for trust, we stop taking their distance personally and start seeing it for what it is, a defense mechanism, not a rejection. The key to breaking through these barriers is not force, not persuasion, and certainly not pressure. It's patience, presence, and emotional steadiness. Avoidants don't need someone to chase them. They need someone who can stand confidently in their own worth, someone who can offer warmth without smothering, trust without expectation, and love without conditions. When they finally see that connection does not mean losing themselves, they begin to let love in, not because they were convinced, but because they finally feel safe enough to choose it for themselves. So whether you're someone who loves an avoidant or you see avoidant patterns in yourself, remember this: love thrives in safety, and the safest love is one where both people are free to be who they are while still choosing each other every single day. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your openness. May you build connections that are not just deep but truly secure.